Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm privileged to welcome a very accomplished professional from California, USA, a fellow member of the YPO, Cecile Moulard. Cecile, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hash, for having me. I'm thrilled, actually.
Thank you. Cecile is the founder and chief executive officer of MixR, which is designed to help organizations build exceptional company cultures and keep people connected. In her own words, she is a fierce Kundalini yoga teacher. And as I just mentioned, she's a fellow member of the YPO. So, Cecile, before we get into discussing MixR, tell me about your own amazing journey from the boardroom to becoming an entrepreneur.
Wow. So you mentioned something that is really important to me and has been for 15 years and probably, hopefully, will be for the next stage of my life is yoga and Kundalini yoga.
Correct.
And that's been really helping me find my strengths and always focus on what I wanted to do in my life. So it's been something that is accompanying me all the time. And so I started my life some years ago, a few years ago.
Yep, absolutely.
And I was lucky enough to start when literally the internet started to appear. And, we were talking about AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy, not really the web yet, but I was there. I was one of those very lucky people that was at the beginning of this thing. And I saw it started changing stuff. So when that happened, it felt so natural to me. And so I was able to start my first company in the internet at that time. And I was working for a media company, and I started the subsidiary of this company, focusing on how the internet will change the way brands are talking to their user and are interacting to their user. And from then on, I was so lucky. I then started Amazon in France.
Wow.
And went on to join a team where we were the first big online dating company. I love it because we went IPO with it.
Wow.
Which was a very interesting experience of being at the very beginning of online dating. And at that point, I felt so, I felt it was so important to be able to do that, because I was looking around me and I saw people getting, it was more and more difficult for them to get to know new people. And so I was just, I felt I was at the beginning of so many fascinating things. And that got me to the boardroom because being the CEO of Amazon in France and all that got me into the boardroom. And that's another story. That's another pivot, I would say, in my life. So on my first board of public company, I was the only woman. I was blonde, which means, people are looking at blondes in a certain way.
Absolutely.
I was much younger than most of the people around the table. And on my very, very first board, I, for the first time in my life, was in a group of people that needed me because they had to. We had a law that say in France, we were the very first country in the world that say that a public company needed 40% of same sex on one board, which means 40% of women. And so I was part of this big trend of, inviting women to the boardroom. And for the first time in my life, here I am, and people don't want me there. They have to have me there, but they don't want me there. Got me thinking, wow, that's interesting. I was, starting to share what I thought I was doing here, which was asking questions and understanding the business, and nobody would be interested in listening to what I have to say. And then I said to myself, wow, we have a subject here. There's something that I need to really understand. And I started to talk with my fellow board members, and it happened that it's not that they were not interested in what I wanted to share. It's just that they didn't know me. They didn't trust me. They had no way to vet me. I was not in the same circles. So it was more of a, don't know what to do with you kind of thing.
Amazing.
And that started me on this path that got me to create MixR. Because really, if you want an organization to be truly integrated and being able to include diverse people, you need to find ways for people to understand each other, trust each other, get to know each other, so that they would be able to work together and do their best work. Okay.
Very interesting.
And that's how I started MixR. And the next step in my head was to say, okay, so how am I supposed to create trust and leverage trust in an organization in a large scale? And I realized that in order to build trust, you need to start with sharing something in common, an interest. If I share an interest with you, then I have something to work with. Correct. I can start building a conversation and maybe integrating someone else into the conversation. So that's how I started MixR.
Wow. And now let's talk about MixR. You talk about trust and belonging in the workplace. What are some of the challenges that you have seen, and how are you handling these through MixR?
So for me, the biggest challenge that I see is what, has been named the Great Resignation. Some other people name it Great Reset, Great Reshuffle, Great Resignation. We are at a time that is so fascinating for an entrepreneur or a manager, leaders, is that people are changing their expectations. They don't want what they had before. They want something new. They don't know exactly what they want. They know what they don't want, okay? But they don't know exactly what they want. And what we want to bring to the table, it's the great reconnection. We want to heal, in some ways, the Great Resignation by offering a way to reconnect at a much deeper level, people together in the organization. And the belief here is that if people know and trust each other, then it will be easier for them to work, co-create, collaborate with each other in the organization. So it's like, the underlying connection that you need in order to be your best. If you don't have that, then you're just a unit of production in an organization. And in some ways, I feel that this is what people have become. And that's what they're fighting against. They don't want that anymore. They want purpose. They want to understand why they're doing what they're doing. They want to be involved in a different way. So we, with MixR and our platform, we offer them a way to reconnect with each other in a totally different way. So that if you, let's say, a big organization, they all have those very absolutely amazing productivity tools in order to connect with each other, Slack and Microsoft Teams and all that. And that's very important. We all need that. It gives us, a sense of organization, and it allows to implement, and it's top down. Okay, you have a team, and in order for a team to work, you need to have a certain type of people in the team, the person from sales and marketing and engineering, and if you miss someone, the task cannot be complete properly.
Correct.
We're coming with a totally different approach. We say, well, people need to find interests that they share, and they can, create communities around those interests. They don't have to, it's not mandatory. And you can create communities around anything you're interested in. Yep. We were talking about ChatGPT. I'm sure in an organization, if you had a community tool, you would create something around ChatGPT, but you would also create maybe a community for people who want to run together every Thursday night, and a community around people who play badminton. Okay. I don't care. What's important is they find a reason to get together, to know each other. And when they do that, next time there's a change happening in the organization, maybe you have a new management, or maybe there's something new technology implemented in the organization that kind of disorganized. When there is change, you're a lot more resilient. When in your organization, you have this circle of trust everywhere. And so it allows our organization to be a lot more resilient in the long run.
Fascinating.
That's what we're after.
Absolutely fascinating. And, as you were talking, I was thinking, you and I are both members of the YPO, and I'm sure both members of forums. The kind of trust and belonging that exists in a forum is what you're trying to probably bring into organizations.
Exactly. We want to bring forum to everyone in the organization. You absolutely got it totally, Ash. This is what we're doing.
Oh, fascinating. So moving on, when you talk about the organizations and communities, what does the word community move to you and to MixR?
Very important question. The way we define community is a community is network plus care. So this notion of care is what changes everything.
Correct.
Behind care, you have this notion of support. You have this notion of shared experience. You have this notion, it's really about emotional commitment versus productivity as we see it. And I think community is a natural complement to teams. It's not going against teams, not at all. We need teams to decide and implement. We need community to be alive as an organization.
Very interesting. So, yeah. Very, very interesting. And when you look at all the work that you're doing, what does the future of work look like to you?
I feel so lucky to be right here, right there. You have no idea. I think it's interesting. Like the rest of the world, I think in going into potential direction. One is try to control everyone with technology and try to have people do whatever you want them to do. That's one trend that's happening. Control. The other trend is I want my ability to be independent, to work when I want, to do what I want. If I want to work from home, I want to be able to work from home. If I want to work from the beach, I want to be. So there's an interesting, it's almost counterintuitive, but I think those two trends are kind of creating a space for us to think again what an organization should look like. And the reason why I'm so excited is I believe organization can be a lot more interesting and a lot more productive in a way that means, kind of sustainably productive, there's a lot of things we can change around why do we create an organization. Because you don't create an organization just because you want to create. It's because you need people.
Correct.
When you're an entrepreneur and you have a big idea, and then you want to start having people coming with you and grow this idea with you, and you want them because alone you cannot do it. You need all these people in order to be able to really nurture your idea and develop it and put it out there. And I would love to come back to that. Why do we create an organization? How do people are involved? How do we reward them for that? So I think there's a whole new way of motivating more than pushing or controlling. It's about changing a few things, kind of re-engineering a little bit how organization work so that it become more sustainable. And we're going to do it with the people we work with, not against them. We're not going to do it to them. We want to do it for them and with them.
Very interesting. My next question to you, Cecile, is on culture. You live in a very, very multicultural country in the US. And all of us from different cultures have our own understanding of trust and belonging. How do you look at culture from a MixR perspective when you're bringing so many different people from so many different backgrounds onto one platform?
Well, so first of all, what happened with MixR, for example, what we see is depending on which country you are in, the interest that are the communities created by employees can be very different.
Correct.
And so that in itself is fascinating. In Europe, for example, the first communities that companies will create are not too intimate. Like it's about sustainability. It's maybe about doing some sport together, but it's nothing really personal. In the US, you will see communities that can be a lot more personal, like cancer survivor or veterans communities or working parents. So think that where you come to your community with more of who you are as a person. If you go to Singapore, probably the first community you will see is a ping pong community. So it's interesting to even look at the interest all over the world. And as an enterprise, when you're using MixR in different part of the world, you get to see how people are different because of the interest they're having. It's so fascinating, Ash. It tells you so, and I think it helps the leadership to kind of be more culture conscious in a good way, because it's not about imposing anything to anyone. You just giving the ability, you letting your employees create whatever they're interested in. So you're not imposing anything on them. And it's really very interesting. And when you and the companies that are implementing MixR really are more kind of people that understand leadership more than management. They are more leaders than managers.
Absolutely. I think you're doing amazing stuff for the companies and communities, getting people together, because trust is something which has always been critical to get good performance. But moving on, Cecile, you're also very, very fiercely, or in your words, you're a fierce Kundalini yoga teacher. What got you interested in Kundalini, and how are you using this at work?
So for me, it's a real technology, actually. Kundalini, in some ways, it's a technology. So how I started really paying attention to how I was using my energy probably about 15 to 20 years ago. And the more I was using technology, the more I was feeling that I needed something that would allow me to reconnect inside, because technology offers you so many ways to connect outside the world, but and you're kind of just forgetting someone here, and this someone is you. So yoga invites you to reconnect. And I think that's probably why you see so many people in California starting yoga and meditation, and especially in the tech business, because people, consciously or not, understand that something is missing.
Correct.
And so it's really about this reconnection. The way I'm using it for me, and especially with, I'm like many other people, I work from home from, about 3 days a week and 2 days a week from the office. And yoga is structuring my days. I wake up early to do my yoga. It's the time that I have with myself that I can really use to pay attention. And I think for me, success looks like something where you're totally conscious of what you're doing, whatever that is, you're conscious about it, and you really put an intention of doing it in a way that is connected to what's important to you. For me, what's important, I look at love as an integration system. Okay. And so, and yoga, as you know, is so intimately connected with Indian culture. There is this part of me that is reconnecting to the spiritual through yoga. And I think that's another big subject, but when it's kind of harder to connect with organized religion, the way a lot of us in the Western world have been connecting to, I think yoga and the yogic philosophy allows you to connect at a totally different level. And for me, it works. It allows me, it feeds my soul in a very important way. So by starting my days with yoga, it allows me during the day to be more available for everyone, to hopefully be kinder, it's really, it's totally structuring my world, I think.
Oh, amazing. Maybe after a few months, I'll reach out to you and say, let's do a conversation only on yoga, because I practice a lot of yoga and I agree with what you're saying. But given our time constraints, Cecile, I have only time for one more question. And this question is for the many, many people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey as a technology leader, as the CEO of Amazon in France, taking a tech dating company to an IPO, doing all the amazing work with MixR, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and from our conversation?
Well, I guess if I may say, I would like to speak from a kind of a more of a female perspective.
Sure,
if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Because I think as a female, especially in tech, we tend to feel a little bit like imposters, or and I don't know if it's only in tech. Honestly, I think we all female feel imposters for one way or reason. And my takeaway, if I could, go back in time, use my yoga better, that at that time I think yoga was really helping me doing that. So I think the first thing I would do is do yoga. But the other thing is self-confidence, in a good way, not self-confidence necessarily like we do in the US, which is it's kind of not, there's no meaning behind it. It's just I'm self-confident. This is not what I'm talking about.
It's inner confidence.
Trusting your instinct, trusting your intuition, and being conscious. So for me, that's the second big thing that I would say. Learning to discern these signs that we constantly receive, but have a hard time to decipher and use. I think if we could do that a lot more, everything would, the world would be rounder.
Yeah.
And the last thing is by trusting you, I think that allows you to better understand people around you. And one thing that's been helping me again and again is my ability to listen and hear things that are not said, or it's just really get to listen to the world around you. You're going to learn a lot more by listening than by talking.
Correct. Well said. And on that note, Cecile, and your three amazing thoughts, which is, build self-confidence as in your words, in a good way. The second one you said was learn to be able to read the signs that we keep receiving, and as they say, the universe conspires to keep communicating to us. Please understand them and use them properly. And the third one, which you said is so critical, which is on the trust part of it, understand people around us. I personally have always had a challenge around, because I've trusted people too much and too many people have let me down. So I fully understand what you are saying. Thank you so much for speaking to me about your amazing journey from a tech leader to an entrepreneur. Thank you for talking to me about MixR and all the amazing things that you're doing by creating trust and belonging in so many organizations. I'm sure thousands and thousands and thousands of people will thank you for this incredible platform that you have created for them. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much, Ash.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.